It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Shireen Hafeez. She is the founder and president of Deaf Kids Code, a nonprofit organization that promotes technology, computer science, and design thinking skills as an innovative tool to empower deaf and hard of hearing students. She is probably one of the most passionate, well-rounded, and inspirational people that I've had the pleasure of working with and getting to know. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Shireen Hafeez.
Hi, everybody. So am I correct? I was reviewing the initial email. So you guys are project manager. Is there like a theme of what you're studying? Or is it just a hodgepodge of a variety of different disciplines? It's a hodgepodge. Okay.
We're all EPICS students.
Okay. Well, you know, this is cool because I've been a community partner of Purdue EPICS now for, gosh, I think somewhere over like 3 years now. And some pretty flippin' amazing things have come out of this collaboration. And I definitely want to get into that with you later on. If there's nothing else you take from today, one antidote I'll say to you is never underestimate the power of collaboration. Never underestimate it, ever. I remember not that long ago, my daughter had asked me, well, you know, you always talk about, you know, networking and, you know, starting something from scratch, and if you believe in it, you know, you can make it happen. But what if you have a full-time job and you want to do a startup or something like that? And my response is collaboration, and you find a way. It's a very magical process. And hopefully you guys will eventually understand this more as your lives go on. So I'm the founder of Deaf Kids Code. What was supposed to be a local grassroots organization has very quickly scaled into a national organization. It was not the intention when I formed the organization, because like many people that start a new enterprise or something new, you have no idea how the world is going to respond. You know, I mean, especially in the endeavor of, you know, making the case that, you know, children with disabilities are worth an investment, not just from society, but corporations and things like that. And that is something that is not really backed by data or statistics. So it was just my own belief system that, that there was a return of investment in investing in this, you know, disenfranchised community. My background is that I have a son who is deaf or hard of hearing, and since the day he was diagnosed, my whole life has been completely emerged into the world of advocacy, lobbying, fighting for children who are deaf and hard of hearing. And it's not about sympathy. So it's not that I feel sorry for children who are deaf and hard of hearing. It's because I truly believed that our indifference to this population was actually our loss in terms of us losing out on being the beneficiaries of that untapped talent pool. Now, of course, you're peeling away many, many, many layers, right? Because it's not just from the local community, it's not just from being disenfranchised from the education system, not just being disenfranchised from, you know, corporate investments into this community and supporting programming and what have you. It also goes from the legislative side in having crappy laws that really, you know, contribute to keeping, you know, this segment of the population down. So you're talking about a Goliath mother of a problem. It's not even one layer. It's like a multitude of layers, right? And I'm only one person. So how the heck, did I manage to do all this? So let me ask you this. Do you think that money makes a difference in being successful in any endeavor? Come on, Mr. Survival, Mr. Angry Bird. What do you think? You think money makes a difference?
Yeah, I think money makes a difference.
Wrong. Okay. Do you think that coming from a powerful network makes a difference? No, it doesn't. Okay, so I had nothing. I didn't have data. I didn't have evidence. I didn't have money. I didn't have corporate backers. I didn't even have a network of anybody that believed in what I was doing. So here's what I did. I went rogue. I went rogue, meaning that I took myself off of every board. I took myself out of any institution that I was going to be accountable for, and I started this organization. Now what do you do? What do you do with that now? Okay, because I've been percolating this idea for a couple of years, because I have friends who are in IT and, in, the digital age, right? And it just became more and more crystallized in my brain that this was the great equalizer. I mean, more than any other time in history, I saw it very, very clearly in front of me that the digital age was the great equalizer. I mean, if you have a computer and you learn Python, the world is at your feet. And for somebody who lives in a world of communication barriers where the world doesn't bend towards your needs, and you have to be, the jack of all trades in figuring out how you're going to survive when you have the inability to communicate, there's nothing more powerful than the digital age. If you learn Python, that's a global, universal language. So I believed in what I was about to do. So I'm going to get to that. So here it is, right? So I'm not a computer scientist. I'm not a master of tech. I'm not a PR person. I didn't learn project management. I studied political science, liberal arts. So the question was, what's the know-how and what makes me all of a sudden become an expert in this, right? How are you going to do this? So my dilemma was, where do I start? How am I going to evangelize and democratize access to this when I'm not the master of this knowledge? And then the eureka moment came when I started researching and I figured out, well, I don't have to be a brilliant, master programmer or things like that, because there are already amazing platforms out there that are open source, that are actually created for people like me and children like ours that can easily access this information. So the platform I developed was going to be very simple. It was going to be hands-on, project-based, visually accessible learning. So even if the children do not have the vocabulary of what is an algorithm, but they sure as hell can create one. So so I was flipping the classroom, you could say, flipping the approach, where we're not going to start about having long lectures, and I'm not going to go through all these, having the vocabulary needed to understand. We were going to do it in reverse. They were going to do it, and then we could discuss what they did. So why not you? Well, one of the good things that I consider of myself is that I don't consider myself a jack of all trade. I don't consider myself an expert on anything. I recognize my weaknesses. And so the power of collaboration is what has helped to give rise to this idea. So as I had mentioned to you before about, starting something with nothing to back up your claim that this was relevant, this was going to work, and people that have met me many times, I've been told that, well, I'm sure that you're the type of person that, nobody says no to. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I'm told no more times than I'm told yes. So diligence and relentlessness cannot be like, I just cannot even emphasize that. You can't be a shrinking violet. And the way you know that you're on to the right idea or that you are headed in the right direction is very simple, is that if it comes from a place of fire, then no amount of no's is going to stop you from what you're doing. No amount of no's. Somebody says, no, I'm not interested. No, thank you. No, we can't support this. You move on. So resilience comes from that blind belief that this is what you're doing. This is how you're going, and you don't even know, you have to learn adaptability and the ability to pivot. But just because people tell you no doesn't mean that you even have to dilute what you originally believed in. So the power of the idea and your belief, because it comes from a place of fire, is what's going to keep you relentless and persistent. Like I always say, is that what is more powerful, rock or water? So what has more power, rock or water? Water. Water is more powerful. Why? Why is it more powerful than rock? Because water has the ability to shape rock, and it does it because of persistence. It's so simple. And you know that no amount of stumbling and no amount of rejection and no amount of, I don't even use the word failure because that's the beauty of evolving. That's the beauty, because then you know what not to do. So those are the things that you store away and you compartmentalize later on, so that's how you cultivate and get it better and better and better. So it's a mindset, but then I also noticed that along this journey, you start to become this certain personality type where you realize that you have to find your tribe. So the way you used to relate to maybe your social circles or your friends or family and things like that, there can be a lot of people very close to you that don't believe in what you're doing, because maybe the results aren't happening fast enough, or maybe they're like, nah, I don't know, maybe you want to try something else. It's at those moments that you become more relentless. It's not even about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. But I also believe that when you remain authentic to your idea, then it becomes a natural filtration system. It becomes, I call it the survival of the fittest, where it's like the people that are meant to be in your tribe, like-minded, not people that think like you, but like-minded, that believe in the idea or believe in the notion, they'll gravitate towards you. And the people that aren't down for the visionaries and the innovators and things like that, weed them out. And you'll see that in your life, that's just kind of where it is. And so that's where, if you're not shameless, you won't get anywhere. So, so you take rejection, but you move on. You take criticism, but you move on. It doesn't dilute your authentic position in what you believe in. So what validation, do you need to move ahead? Well, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of the very first workshop I did, and that was at the John Powers Center in Chicago, and I was working with a group of deaf and hard of hearing middle schoolers. And because they were in summer school, it means that they were at the highest risk of falling even further behind than the rest of their peers. So that was my first sample group of conducting a workshop. And I'll never forget that there was a girl, Ariana, and I'll always cite her as my #1 example because she is exactly the contradiction of the norms that I challenge. So if you look at Ariana's I-STEP scores and the way we've, created this one-dimensional view of how we measure ability, you would think this girl is going to go from school to couch. There is no way that she is going to, get anywhere. She's 14 years old. She was late in acquiring sign language. She's not verbal or oral. And higher education is probably not going to be an option for her. So our first coding challenge that we had was, to program these robots, and each child in that session had their own robot, and they had their own iPad, and they were supposed to code and go through this obstacle course and complete it. And Ariana not just did it, but she did it faster and with more precision than anybody else in that workshop. The principal, the teachers that were witnessing this, that was like the moving mountains, splitting the sea kind of a moment. It was a holy moly moment. And that was like the most extraordinary moment of my life, because what did that say? So we all knew that though Ariana, on standardized tests, show her at below average for math, right? Below average for reading. But we knew the high level of complexity and strategic thinking, problem solving, command sequences, measurements. I can go on and on of how many skill sets had to be implemented in order to accomplish that. I mean, it really was like a miraculous moment. And I remember that it was exactly the validation I needed. It was exactly the validation, and it was from that moment on that I decided that what I was doing was right, and I was going to form a 501c3 officially, because this was what I needed. And I remember very specifically, as I was loading my supplies up into my car, and the principal was helping me. She had been working with the deaf students for her entire career, 35 years. And she was blown away. And I remember telling her very specifically, I said, Terry, here's my thing. I don't give a damn if Ariana ever surpasses a 4th grade reading level. You saw what happened in that classroom. What matters to me is that if Ariana were to become proficient in a coding language, she can make a good living. She doesn't have to be, ending up on the couch. So this is the advantage of being rogue, is that you have that agency to pivot and wiggle and say whatever you believe. And what happened after that? What was the rippling effect of this particular school? So she ended up ordering this gigantic fleet of like those robots, iPads. The teacher of those middle schoolers put herself in a coding boot camp so she could incorporate coding into her classroom. So that's impact, right? And I could go on and on about the impacts that this has had, but that was my very first moment of validation. And you have no idea how many rejections I had had through a variety of different angles, and saying that even volunteering, people would refuse, who had the skill sets. They would say, I don't know how I'm gonna communicate this, how's this gonna work? I'm like, look, I'm not proficient in American Sign Language either, but everything we're gonna do is visual. Let's figure this out. And now you have people gravitating again and saying, I think I wanna volunteer, I think I'd like to, I think I could do this. So this is it, right? I mean, so you're going to be told no, and maybe there'll be people that sympathize with your cause or your product or your company or whatever it is that you're going to create. But I truly, truly, truly believe that if you believe it, they'll believe it. Like if you believe in what you're doing honestly and sincerely and passionately, I do believe that the world responds. I really believe that. I mean, I've talked to other people that started from nothing, and somehow, eventually the world responds, right? I mean, like if you look at other people that have shaped, I mean, look at the founder of Amazon. Did you see have you ever seen that picture of him sitting in his first office? He wrote Amazon with a Sharpie on a white piece of paper, and he taped it to the wall. That was how he started. And I'm sure, without a question of a doubt, he had a ton of naysayers. I mean, look at the creation of the internet. I remember seeing a clip, and I remember, 20 years ago or whatever, that was like on the Today Show, and I saw this clip, and they were saying, so what is the internet? So this thing that has created that's going to be digital email, or it's going to be called an email versus sending mail. I mean, so I think that there's something very exciting and exhilarating about starting something that hasn't been done before. I think that there is something very enticing and seductive about the notion that nobody has done this before, which is all the more reason why you should do whatever on earth it wants, whatever it is that you're thinking of. Because why not? I mean, who would have thought that, I mean, we just saw Elon Musk, and, and what was that? A car in space? A car in space? I mean, that didn't even seem real. Cars running on electricity. That's wild. That's wild stuff. But it's here. I mean, we're here. I was at a pitch night judging, and there were a group of students saying that I think restaurants should be automated. I think we can remove the human factor altogether. And you go into a restaurant and everything is automated. And the reality of it is, as much as it hurt me to take away the humanity side of it, but they're right. I mean, I can already feel that at some point in our lives, maybe restaurants will be automated. They already have like a robotic kitchen called Molly's Kitchen. And it's a robot that actually will create any recipe that you download onto it. It's wild stuff, but these are the glimpses of the possibilities. But if no one had thought of those outlandish, or what we consider today outlandish, maybe it won't be outlandish. Maybe one day, someday when you have children, that's going to be the norm. I mean, I remember seeing this movie Back to the Future with my son, and the mother answered the phone with the wire attached to the wall, and he was like, "What's that?" I'm like, "That's a phone. That's the original phone." So in his lifetime, he never saw, a phone without a cord. I mean, he's never seen that. He's always seen everything to be wireless. So, if you believe it, they'll believe it, and eventually you'll prove them right. So this is a very important factor. I think that one of the failures of the possibilities is, having to be right and not taking wisdom from other people. So the power of the network is what's going to get you through. So if you don't have money, you don't know anybody, and how are you going to do this? You find a way. So with the digital age, you have LinkedIn, right? You can't sit in your own silos and expect the world to come to you. The hustle is very, very real. And the hustle is ongoing. You know how I do everything? You know how I work with teams all across, some in the world and, and across, I do everything from this. I would be chopped liver if I didn't have my smartphone. I have like 2 email accounts, my LinkedIn, you know, my Facebook Messenger. I mean, you know, this is the hustle. So you get into this mode where you're like, you know, you are working nonstop. I mean, I can't even calculate how many hours, you know, and this is another, you know, factor, is that the ability to have the martial arts of the mind, I say. Because when you are the creator of something, if you're the inventor of something, if you're the leader of something, you have to master your ability of prioritizing, right? So like in my case, you know, I'm not just the social media manager. I'm the outreach director. I'm the business developer. I'm the grant writer. I'm the PR. I'm the, you know, project manager. I'm the curriculum developer. I'm the tax person. I mean, you know, I'm doing it all, right? And don't forget, I have a family, so I have to cook like, you know, chicken when I go home. I mean, it's insane, you know, but you get into this mode where, you know, it's like, because to me, this isn't work. To me, this is like a part of my life. So I don't think of it as work, you know, because I don't get paid for any of this. But it's your sense of purpose in the world, right? So if you create something and you believe it, you know, it just becomes your way of life. I mean, I started this organization, I mean, I officially became a 501c3 3 years ago. And, you know, I do small, you know, group settings and workshops. And, you know, I've worked with, you know, over, you know, 600 and maybe 50 kids up until this point in different regions. And, you know, and I was calculating that by the end of 2019, my organization would have worked with children in half the country. How did that happen? And how do you do it without money? So let me get into that. So through networking, creating relationships, finding people that maybe would fall into this tribe or might have interest in it. And eventually, I was facilitated an introduction with the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, which apparently is a research platform housed under the Rochester Institute of Technology. And they had National Science Foundation money that serves the southeast region of the United States. So that's how I'm able to have outreach in 9 additional states beyond what I had already done. A mother from North Carolina who worked for Dell, who's the mother of a deaf daughter, had reached out to me, and she facilitated an introduction with Dell Foundations. So she helped me get some money that's helping me go to the Rhode Island School for the Deaf, Pennsylvania School for the Deaf, St. Joseph School for the Deaf in New York, and Baltimore Public Schools program for the deaf. Bam, half the country without any substantial funding, right? Without any like big, you know, any real big backing, because even the Dell, you know, I had requested a very modest amount just to cover that. But now I'm in a position where, you know, I can make a larger claim because my model has been proven. The outreach from people around the country is very high, the demand for what we're doing. And the, you know, just, I mean, it's the most extraordinary thing. Now, if you had told me 4 years ago or even 5 years ago when I was starting this organization that this is where it would be, I would have never believed it. And maybe the fun part is that the dreams, you know, that come true are the dreams you didn't know you had, which is the beauty of, you know, going through the process of creating, conceptualizing, ideation, prototyping, and, you know, sampling your population or your idea, testing out your idea. So that's my son. And actually, all the pictures that you've seen are of children of workshops around the country that I've worked with. Yeah, so this is where it all began.